My name is Cyrus, and I'm 32 years old. Growing up, my sister Kelly and I were inseparable, the dynamic duo that even our parents couldn't break apart. Then she met Marcus, and everything changed. The wedding invitation arrived despite the growing tension between us, but nothing prepared me for that photo shoot. "You'll just ruin the photos," Kelly snapped. My mother added, "Let her have her moment. Don't come." I stayed quiet that day, but 3 weeks later I made a decision that would change everything. Before I continue with my story, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how I bought my sister's dream venue and what happened next. Kelly is 4 years younger than me, which made me the default protector throughout our childhood. When neighborhood kids tried bullying her in elementary school, I was the one who stepped in despite being a scrawny kid myself. Our parents, Thomas and Diane, always emphasized family loyalty above all else. "Blood is thicker than water," Dad would say during our Sunday dinners, and nothing should come between that. Mom would nod along, adding her favorite line, "Family sees you at your worst, but loves you at your best." We internalized these values, carrying them into our teenage years and beyond. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Columbus, Ohio, we weren't wealthy, but our parents ensured we never lacked opportunities. Dad worked as a high school history teacher while Mom managed a local bank branch. They scrimped and saved to put both of us through college without debt. After graduating with a business degree, I started at a small real estate firm. The work was grueling, cold calls, weekend showings, and dealing with difficult clients, but I was determined to succeed. Within 5 years, I had saved enough to make my first independent investment, a rundown duplex that I renovated myself on weekends. That property became the foundation of my own business, Westbrook Investments, a boutique real estate development company focusing on revitalizing neglected properties. Kelly took a different path. Always the creative one, she majored in communications and landed a job at a marketing agency right after graduation. Her eye for design and genuine way with people made her a natural. She quickly became one of their top account managers, handling several major local businesses. Even as adults with demanding careers, we maintained our close relationship. We established a tradition of monthly dinners, just the two of us, rotating between our favorite restaurants. During these dinners, we'd share everything: work, frustrations, dating disasters, and future dreams. When Kelly was passed over for a promotion she deserved, I brought her favorite chocolate cake to her apartment and listened to her vent for hours. When I lost a major property deal, she showed up with beer and pizza, helping me analyze what went wrong and how to approach the next opportunity. Everything changed when Kelly met Marcus Stewart at a charity networking event 3 years ago. The Stewarts owned half the commercial real estate in downtown Columbus, with holdings extending throughout the Midwest. Marcus, as the only son, was being groomed to take over the family empire. Tall, conventionally handsome, and armed with an Ivy League education, he had the kind of confidence that comes from never having to worry about money. I still remember meeting him for the first time at a dinner Kelly organized. He arrived 20 minutes late with a vague apology about an important call running long. Throughout the evening, he dominated the conversation with stories about his recent trips to Monaco and Tokyo. Whenever I tried sharing something about my business, he'd nod with what felt like rehearsed interest before steering the conversation back to himself. "Your little renovation projects sound charming," he said at one point, swirling his $100 a bottle wine. "Have you ever considered scaling up? I could introduce you to some people." The condescension was subtle but unmistakable. I noticed changes in Kelly almost immediately. Our monthly dinners became less frequent, often canceled last minute, when Marcus had a networking opportunity he wanted her to attend. Her wardrobe transformed from comfortable creative outfits to designer brands I knew she couldn't afford on her salary. When I asked about it, she mentioned Marcus had surprised her with a shopping spree. "He says presentation is important in his world," she explained, examining her new manicure. "First impressions matter when you're meeting the right people." The sister who once mocked pretentious people was now becoming one of them. She started dropping names of celebrities. Marcus had met vacations they were planning and exclusive restaurants where they had reservations. The Kelly who once proudly fought for a $5 raise was now casually mentioning $5,000 handbags. I tried talking to her about these changes several times. You seem different lately, I said during one of our increasingly rare dinners. Is everything okay? I'm evolving, Cyrus, she responded with a hint of defensiveness. Marcus has shown me what's possible when you move in the right circles. Maybe you're just a little jealous. That stung, but I backed off. Our parents noticed the changes too, but chalked it up to the excitement of a new relationship. She's just enjoying herself, Mom said when I expressed concern. Not everyone wants to work 70-hour weeks like you do. Despite the growing distance, my apartment remained Kelly's unofficial sanctuary when she needed to decompress. She'd show up unannounced, kick off her designer heels, and transform back into my sister for a few hours. During these visits, she'd sometimes complain about Marcus's family, how his mother critiqued her table manners, how his father questioned her career ambitions, how his sister excluded her from conversations. They're just protective of their family legacy, she'd rationalize after venting. Marcus says they were the same way with his ex-girlfriends. Once we're married, it'll be different. But these vulnerable moments became increasingly rare. More often, she'd defend the Stewarts fiercely if I expressed any concern. You don't understand, their world became her standard response. As months passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing my sister to a world that measured worth by bank accounts and last names. The Kelly, who once spent hours helping a struggling college friend with job applications, was being replaced by someone who judged people by their connections and designer labels. 8 months into their relationship, Marcus proposed to Kelly during a private helicopter tour over Niagara Falls. The ring featured a diamond so large that Kelly joked she needed to strengthen her wrist muscles just to wear it. When she called me with the news, her voice trembled with excitement. Marcus says we can have any venue, any flowers, any menu, she gushed. His parents want to handle everything. That should have been my first warning sign, but I was determined to be supportive. As long as it's what you want, I said carefully. Of course it is. What girl wouldn't want a dream wedding with no budget constraints? The dream quickly became complicated. 2 weeks after the engagement, Kelly called me late at night, her voice tight with tension. The Stewarts have hired a wedding planner who's worked with actual celebrities, she whispered, as though Marcus might overhear despite being away on business. She's amazing, but she keeps talking about vision and statement, rather than asking what I want. Have you told them about that historic greenhouse venue you've loved since college? I asked, referring to the Crystal Gardens, a restored Victorian glass building that Kelly had dreamed of getting married in since we attended a cousin's wedding there years ago. I mentioned it. She sighed. Mrs. Stewart said it was charming but unsuitable for a wedding of this magnitude. They're pushing for the Grand Plaza Hotel ballroom because they have connections with the owner. Over the following weeks, similar calls became routine. The dress Kelly loved was deemed too simple by Marcus's mother. The local band she wanted was replaced by a string quartet that had performed for governors. Her desire for a sustainable farm-to-table menu was overruled in favor of imported delicacies and expensive champagne. When I suggested she stand her ground, she became defensive. You don't understand how important this is to Marcus's family. They have relationships to maintain, impressions to make. But it's your wedding, I countered. It's our wedding, she corrected, which means compromising. From where I stood, all the compromising seemed to be coming from Kelly. When the official wedding planning committee was formed, I was noticeably absent from the list, despite having planned several successful charity events through my business. Kelly called to explain, sounding uncomfortable. Marcus's mother thinks the planning committee should be family only, she said. I am family, I pointed out. You know what I mean. Future family. Besides, you're so busy with work. The exclusion hurt more than I wanted to admit. I'd always imagined being involved in my sister's wedding, helping create the day she had talked about since we were kids. Instead, I was relegated to the periphery, receiving occasional updates about decisions I had no input in. At a family dinner, at the Stewarts' mansion, I overheard Marcus joking with his college friends about my business. Cyrus flips properties in the up-and-coming neighborhoods, he said, making air quotes. Very grassroots operation compared to what we do, but he's passionate about it. His friends chuckled, and to my disappointment, Kelly laughed along, adding, he's always been the practical one in the family. Later that night, I searched online for the Crystal Gardens, the venue Kelly had originally wanted. Their website showed stunning photos of glass ceilings draped with twinkling lights, and lush greenery surrounding intimate table arrangements. On a whim, I called them, and was surprised to learn they had an opening for the exact date of Kelly's wedding due to a last-minute cancellation. The price was steep, nearly $70,000 for the venue alone, but within reach for me if I leveraged some of my business assets. I didn't book it, but I didn't stop thinking about it either. As the wedding date approached, Kelly became increasingly stressed. She lost weight, developed insomnia, and called less frequently. When we did talk, our conversations revolved entirely around wedding details and Stewart family expectations. Gone were our discussions about books, movies, or her creative marketing campaigns. My parents urged patience. "Wedding planning is stressful," Mom said during a private dinner at their house. "Once it's over, she'll be herself again." But I wasn't convinced. The changes in Kelly seemed more permanent than temporary, a fundamental shift in values rather than wedding jitters. The final straw was when Kelly canceled our standing monthly dinner for the third time in a row, this time to attend a business dinner with Marcus's father's associates. "It's important I start understanding the family business," she texted. "Marcus says it makes his father happy to see me taking an interest." I responded with a simple, "No problem," but the growing distance between us felt like a chasm. My sister was disappearing into the Stewart family, her identity slowly being erased and replaced with a version that fit their world better. 3 months before the wedding, Kelly called me with genuine excitement in her voice for the first time in weeks. "We're doing a professional photo shoot for the wedding website and save the dates," she announced. "Saturday the 15th at Riverside Park, near the Rose Garden. The photographer has shot for Vogue." "Sounds fancy," I replied, trying to match her enthusiasm. "It'll be mostly family photos. Marcus's extended family is flying in specially. But I want pictures with you and Mom and Dad too. Wear something nice, blues or grays, preferably to match our color scheme." She reminded me about the date several times over the next 2 weeks, texting specific details about the time and exact location. I even received a formal email from the wedding planner with parking instructions and wardrobe guidelines. This level of inclusion felt like a positive shift, a sign that perhaps Kelly was reclaiming some control over the wedding process. I took the day off work, declining a meeting with potential investors to ensure I'd be available. The morning of the shoot, I purchased a new navy blue button-down shirt and gray slacks, spending more than I normally would to make sure I matched the upscale nature of the event. The weather cooperated beautifully, sunny with a slight breeze, perfect for outdoor photography. I arrived 15 minutes early, parking my sensible sedan among a collection of luxury vehicles. Following the signs marked Stewart Wilson Wedding, I made my way to the Rose Garden. The scene resembled a magazine spread more than a family photo shoot. At least 30 people milled about, all impeccably dressed. A team of assistants arranged lighting equipment, while another touched up makeup on various family members. Under a white canopy, a refreshment table offered champagne and gourmet hors d'oeuvre. Marcus's mother spotted me first, her gaze traveling from my face to my clothes, with poorly concealed disapproval. Though I met the dress code requirements, my off-the-rack clothing clearly couldn't compete with the designer labels everyone else wore. "Cyrus," she acknowledged with a tight smile. "Kelly mentioned you might join us." Might join Kelly had practically insisted I come. The photographer, a slim man with an affected European accent, began arranging people for the first shots. "Let's start with immediate family only," he called out. "Bridegroom parents on both sides." I stepped back, watching as Kelly was positioned between Marcus and his parents, my parents standing awkwardly to the side. Several configurations followed: the couple with his parents, the couple with my parents, Kelly with both mothers, Marcus with both fathers. Each grouping was meticulously arranged, photographed from multiple angles, and then rearranged. An hour passed, and I remained on the sidelines, scrolling through work emails on my phone while waiting for my turn. The sun grew hotter, and my new shirt stuck uncomfortably to my back. Still, I maintained a patient smile whenever Kelly glanced my way. As the photographer worked through various family combinations, I overheard Marcus's mother speaking to the wedding planner. "I think we should stick to the core family for the remaining shots," she said, voice low but not quite low enough. "We're running behind schedule, and the light will be perfect for the couple's portrait soon." The wedding planner nodded. "I'll let the photographer know to wrap up the family shots." Kelly stood nearby, clearly within earshot, She bit her lip, but said nothing. Assuming core family included me, I finished my water and prepared to join the next set of photos. The photographer was reviewing images on his camera while assistants adjusted the lighting. "I think we're ready for the bridge location," the photographer announced. "Let's gather the final family grouping and then move there for the couple's portraits." I approached the assembly area where Kelly stood with Marcus and both sets of parents. Marcus's sister arrived at the same moment, checking her watch with exaggerated concern. "We're already 20 minutes behind schedule," she announced loudly. "The rental time for the garden expires at 4, and we still need the bridge shots and the fountain series." I smiled at Kelly. "Where do you want me to stand?" The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. Kelly looked at Marcus, then at his mother, then down at her designer shoes. When she finally raised her eyes to meet mine, I saw something I'd never seen directed at me before. Annoyance tinged with embarrassment. "Cyrus," she said, her voice tight, "you'll just ruin the photos." The words hit me like a physical blow. Around us, conversation stopped as people pretended not to listen. I stood frozen, certain I'd misheard. "What?" My mother stepped forward, placing a hand on my arm. Instead of defending me, she whispered, "Let her have her moment, Cyrus. Don't come. We can take family photos another time." From the corner of my eye, I caught Marcus's slight smirk, quickly disguised as he put his arm around Kelly's waist. The photographer cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should move to the bridge now. The light is shifting." Nobody contradicted him. Nobody spoke up for me. Not Kelly, not my father, who studied the ground as though fascinated by his shoes. Not even my mother, who had always taught us that family stands together. I felt heat rising up my neck, a mixture of humiliation and disbelief washing over me. These people, my own family, were casting me aside because I didn't fit the aesthetic of a wedding photo, because my presence might somehow detract from the perfect image the Stewarts wanted to project. Without a word, I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard the photographer directing everyone toward the bridge, the moment already forgotten as they moved on with their perfect pictures for their perfect wedding. In my car, I sat gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed several times, likely my parents', but I ignored it. The drive home passed in a blur of hurt and confusion. How had my relationship with Kelly deteriorated to this point? When had appearances become more important than our bond? That evening, my parents called 4 times before I finally answered. "Kelly was just stressed," Mom said immediately. "You know how important these photos are for the announcements?" "Important enough to humiliate her brother?" I asked. "No one was trying to humiliate you," Dad interjected. "It was a misunderstanding." But it wasn't. We all knew it wasn't. Later that night, I received a text from Kelly. "Sorry you felt left out today, but it was just easier this way. The photographer was on a tight schedule, and Marcus's family wanted formal portraits only. We can take sibling photos at the rehearsal dinner." No actual apology, no acknowledgement of how her words had cut me to the core. Just a justification and a hollow promise of sibling photos later, as though that were some consolation prize. I didn't respond. What could I say that she'd chosen her fiancé's family's superficial approval over her brother's feelings, that I barely recognized the person she'd become? Instead, I opened my laptop and returned to the Crystal Gardens website, staring at images of the venue Kelly had once dreamed of. The venue that had been deemed unsuitable by people who cared more about impressing business associates than making my sister happy on her wedding day. Something shifted in me that night. The hurt didn't disappear, but it transformed into resolve. If Kelly couldn't stand up for herself, for what she truly wanted, perhaps someone needed to show her what she was sacrificing in her quest to please the Stewarts. The formal wedding invitation arrived 2 weeks later, thick, cream-colored cardstock in a hand-addressed envelope. Cyrus Westbrook, and guessed it read, though I hadn't dated anyone seriously in over a year. Inside was a smaller note in Kelly's handwriting. "Hope you can make it, love, Kelly." No mention of the photo shoot incident, no acknowledgement of the growing distance between us, just a generic note she'd probably written on dozens of invitations. My first instinct was to decline. The thought of sitting through a ceremony celebrating Kelly's absorption into a family that clearly looked down on me and my parents was almost unbearable. But my parents called the same day the invitation arrived, urging me to reconsider. She's still your sister, Mom insisted. Whatever's happening now, you'll regret not being there. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was overreacting to wedding stress that would dissipate once the big day passed. But the image of Kelly's face as she dismissed me from the photos haunted me. That afternoon, I contacted the Crystal Gardens again, requesting a meeting with the venue manager. Susan Reynolds was a professional woman in her 50s who had overseen the space for 15 years. She greeted me warmly in her office, overlooking the main garden area. "I understand you're interested in our venue," she began. "Are you planning a wedding?" "Not exactly," I admitted. "My sister is getting married in 3 months. This was always her dream venue, but her fiancé's family preferred something else." Susan's expression softened. "That happens more often than you'd think. Future in-laws can be persuasive. The thing is," I continued, "I know you have a booking for June 18th. I'm wondering if it would be possible to buy out that date." She raised her eyebrows. "Buy out a confirmed booking? That's highly unusual. We have contracts, deposits paid." "I understand. I'm prepared to compensate both your venue and the displaced couple generously. Money isn't the issue." She studied me carefully. "Mind if I ask why you'd go to such lengths?" I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "My sister has changed since meeting her fiancé. She's sacrificing what she wants to please his family," I thought. Maybe having her dream venue as an option might help her remember who she is. It wasn't the whole truth, but it wasn't a lie either. Susan tapped her pen against her desk. "The couple currently booked for that date has been challenging to work with, very demanding, multiple changes to their contract. Between us, they've made my staff cry twice." She pulled up a calendar on her computer. "Let me make a call." She stepped out of the office, returning 15 minutes later, with a contemplative expression. "Here's the situation. The couple booked for June 18th is having their ceremony at 3 p.m., reception to follow. They've made numerous special requests that have strained our resources. We've tried to accommodate them, but frankly, if there were a way to end the relationship professionally, we would consider it." My heart rate quickened. "And is there a way?" "Our contract has a clause allowing us to cancel with full refund plus 20% compensation for extenuating circumstances." She hesitated. "Building issues, safety concerns, that sort of thing." "What would qualify?" "A plumbing emergency would be unfortunate but not unheard of. Old buildings like this have temperamental systems." I nodded slowly, understanding the implication. "And if such an unfortunate event were to occur, would you have any alternative venues to recommend to the displaced couple?" "As it happens, I maintain relationships with several comparable venues for emergency situations." The conversation continued in this careful, hypothetical manner. By the end, we had an understanding for a substantial fee. Crystal Gardens would experience a plumbing emergency the night before June 18th, necessitating the cancellation of the currently booked wedding, which, to my shock, turned out to be Kelly and Marcus's. The Stewarts had booked the Crystal Gardens after all, keeping it from Kelly as a surprise, yet still managing to deny her input on every other aspect of the planning. The irony was almost too perfect. The venue Kelly had dreamed of was actually where she would be getting married, but under the Stewarts' terms, not hers. I left Crystal Gardens with mixed emotions. Part of me wanted to call Kelly immediately and reveal what her future in-laws had done, booking her dream venue but continuing to exclude her from meaningful decisions. Another part, the part still raw from her rejection, wanted to proceed with the plan, not to ruin her wedding but to force a moment of truth. Would she recognize the manipulation at play? Would Marcus stand by her in a crisis or show his true colors? That evening, as I weighed my options, Kelly called. The first time she'd initiated contact since the photo shoot. "Cyrus, I've been so busy with wedding stuff, but I wanted to tell you about my bachelorette party plans. Megan is organizing a weekend in Miami. Marcus's parents are letting us use their beach house." She launched into details about spa treatments and yacht rentals, speaking as though nothing had changed between us. I listened, responding with appropriate enthusiasm while my mind raced with the knowledge I now possessed. Near the end of the call, almost as an afterthought, she mentioned the venue. "The Grand Plaza is beautiful, of course. The ballroom has these amazing chandeliers. It's not exactly what I'd pictured, but it's stunning. What had you pictured? I asked carefully. She sighed, her voice dropping to a whisper. Remember Cousin Amber's wedding at Crystal Gardens? That greenhouse with all the lights and flowers. I used to drive by it, sometimes imagining how it would look with my own decorations. In the background, I heard Marcus's voice. Babe, who are you talking to? We're going to be late for dinner with Dad's associates. It's just Cyrus, she replied, voice suddenly brighter. Anyway, I should go. The Grand Plaza will be perfect. Marcus says it's where all the best Columbus weddings happen. After we hung up, I made my decision. I contacted Susan Reynolds and confirmed our arrangement. The Crystal Gardens would be mine for June 18th, following a convenient plumbing emergency that would displace Kelly and Marcus's wedding. Over the next week, I researched backup venues suitable for emergency relocations, anonymously reserving 3 different locations for the same date. None had the prestige of the Grand Plaza or the charm of Crystal Gardens, but all could accommodate a large wedding on short notice. I paid deposits from a separate business account, ensuring the reservations would hold even if never claimed. I maintained normal, if somewhat distant contact with my family during this time. I attended Marcus's bachelor party as an obligation, sitting through hours of his college friends reminiscing about exclusive clubs and luxury spring breaks. During a particularly drunken moment, I overheard Marcus telling his best man, Kelly's great, but man, the wedding planning has been intense. Her ideas are so provincial, you know. Thank God for my mother stepping in. His friend laughed. At least she's trainable, right? Not like that last girl who kept fighting your mom on everything. Exactly. Kelly knows which battles are worth fighting. And hey, happy wife, happy life, even if she doesn't get her flower arrangements or whatever. Their laughter cemented my resolve. This wasn't just about a venue or wedding photos. It was about Kelly being systematically separated from her own identity, her desires dismissed as provincial by people who claim to care about her happiness. 2 days before the wedding, I received final confirmation from Susan Reynolds. The plan was set at 9 p.m. The night before the wedding, the Crystal Gardens would contact Kelly and Marcus to inform them of a catastrophic plumbing issue requiring immediate cancellation of their event. At precisely 9:15 on the evening before the wedding, my phone rang. Kelly's name flashed on the screen, her contact photo, a snapshot from her college graduation, a painful reminder of who she used to be. Cyrus. Her voice was frantic, thick with tears. Everything's ruined. The venue just called. There's flooding throughout the building. Broken pipes or something. They're canceling our wedding. I gripped the phone tighter. What? That's terrible. Where are you now? At Mom and Dad's. Marcus is calling everyone he knows, trying to find another venue, but everything's booked. His mother is blaming me, saying I should have chosen the Grand Plaza after all. I don't know what to do. I'll be right over, I promised. The scene at my parents' house was chaotic. Kelly sat on the couch in sweatpants and a t-shirt, her eyes red from crying. Marcus paced the living room, phone pressed to his ear, voice rising in frustration. My parents hovered anxiously, offering tea and platitudes that did nothing to ease the tension. Marcus's parents had arrived as well, his mother's perfectly coiffed hair and full makeup incongruous at this late-night emergency. She stood in the corner, whispering furiously to her husband. This is exactly why we wanted the Grand Plaza, she said, not bothering to lower her voice as I entered. Established venues don't have these infrastructure issues. Marcus hung up his call with a curse. Nothing, absolutely nothing available tomorrow, not even the conference rooms at the Marriott. He turned to Kelly. We'll have to postpone. There's no other option. Kelly's face crumpled. Postpone. But people have flown in from all over. My grandparents, your aunts from California. What do you expect me to do? Marcus snapped. Perform magic. Create a venue out of thin air. I cleared my throat. I might know somewhere available. All eyes turned to me with varying degrees of hope and skepticism. You, Marcus's mother said, not bothering to hide her disdain. What venues would you have access to that Marcus doesn't? I addressed Kelly directly. It might not be what you had in mind, but I think it could work with some quick adjustments. Marcus scoffed. Some community center, probably. We're talking about a 300-person wedding with a sit-down dinner and dance floor. Kelly ignored him, her eyes fixed on me. Please, Cyrus, if you know somewhere, anything, I'm desperate. Let me make a call to confirm, I said, stepping into the kitchen. I pretended to have a conversation, thanking an imaginary venue manager for accommodating us on short notice. When I returned to the living room, I pulled out my phone and showed Kelly photos of Crystal Gardens, fully decorated for a wedding with white roses and twinkling lights, images Susan had sent me earlier that day. Kelly's eyes widened in disbelief. But that's Crystal Gardens. They're booked solid for years. And isn't that where our wedding was supposed to be? It is, I confirmed. They had a cancellation this morning, another wedding relocating due to family illness. I know the manager through a business connection. She says we can view it tonight if we want. Marcus looked suspicious, but desperate enough not to question this stroke of luck too deeply. We should at least look, he said to Kelly. Better than nothing. 20 minutes later, our strange procession arrived at Crystal Gardens. Susan met us at the entrance, professionally sympathetic to our predicament. She led us through the main doors into the greenhouse space. Kelly gasped audibly. The Victorian glass structure was transformed into a wedding wonderland. White roses and hydrangeas cascaded from hanging planters. Thousands of fairy lights twinkled among the greenery, and crystal chandeliers hung at strategic intervals, casting a warm glow over elegantly set tables. In the center, a dance floor surrounded by more flowers awaited, and at the far end, an archway of white blossoms marked the ceremony space. This is exactly how I always imagined it, Kelly whispered, tears forming in her eyes. Marcus's mother pushed forward. How much for tomorrow? What's your crisis rate? Susan glanced at me before answering. Given the circumstances, we're prepared to honor the same rate you were paying at your original venue. That's impossible, Marcus's father interjected. Crystal Gardens is twice the price of where we were booked. Susan smiled diplomatically. Let's just say we've already been compensated for the difference. All eyes turned to me. Kelly's expression shifted from confusion to dawning realization. Cyrus, she questioned, did you arrange this? The moment of truth had arrived. I took a deep breath. Yes and no. I reserved Crystal Gardens weeks ago, after the photo shoot incident. The photo shoot, Marcus asked, looking between us. What incident? Kelly's face flushed with what might have been shame or anger. Perhaps both. It was nothing. It wasn't nothing, I said quietly. It was the day you told me I'd ruin the photos. The day Mom said to let you have your moment, without me in it. A heavy silence fell over the group. Marcus's parents exchanged glances while my parents looked distinctly uncomfortable. That still doesn't explain how you secured this venue for tomorrow, Marcus's father said, ever the businessman. Because he didn't secure it for tomorrow, Kelly realized aloud. You had this planned all along, didn't you? The plumbing emergency at our venue. That was you. I met her gaze steadily. The wedding that was canceled at Crystal Gardens tonight was yours, Kelly. The Stewarts booked it months ago as a surprise, but kept making decisions without your input. I found out when I inquired about availability. Marcus's mother made an indignant noise. That's absurd. We would never. The contract has your signature. Mrs. Stewart Susan interjected calmly, along with all the amendment requests your wedding planner submitted. Kelly turned to Marcus, her expression hardening. Did you know about this? That they booked my dream venue but still wouldn't let me make any decisions? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. I knew they were planning a venue surprise, but not the details. It doesn't matter anyway. Your brother clearly manipulated the situation to what? Show off, prove a point. To give Kelly a choice, I corrected. Something she hasn't had much of since you proposed. Marcus's face darkened. This is ridiculous. We have a wedding tomorrow. Assuming you're actually allowing us to use this venue, rather than just torturing my fiancé with what could have been. The venue is yours, I assured them, fully paid for with the staff ready to execute whatever vision Kelly actually wants. Not what your mother wants, not what your wedding planner wants, what Kelly wants. For a moment, no one spoke. Kelly stared at the beautiful space, then at Marcus, then at me. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, despite the tears in her eyes. Could I have a moment alone with my brother, please? Marcus started to protest, but his father placed a restraining hand on his arm. Let's give them space. We need to call the wedding planner anyway. When everyone had moved to the entrance hall, Kelly and I stood alone among the flowers and twinkling lights. You could have ruined everything, she said quietly. If you hadn't secured this place, I'd be without a venue right now. I had backups reserved, I admitted. I wasn't going to leave you stranded. She shook her head, a mix of emotions playing across her face. Why go to all this trouble? Was humiliating Marcus's family worth it? This was never about humiliating anyone. It was about showing you what you've been giving up, who you've been becoming. I gestured around us. This was your dream, Kelly. The one you shared with me years ago. But when Marcus's family dismissed it, you just accepted it. Like you've accepted every other decision they've made for you. Her eyes flashed with anger. You don't understand the pressure. I understand perfectly, I interrupted. I've watched you shrink yourself to fit into their world. I've listened to you complain about their control while defending it in the same breath. I heard Marcus tell his friends you were trainable at his bachelor party. She flinched at that, her anger giving way to hurt. He said that. The Kelly I grew up with would never let anyone make her feel less than. She wouldn't let family exclude her brother from wedding photos because he didn't fit their aesthetic. She wouldn't abandon her own taste and preferences to please her in-laws. Kelly sank onto a nearby chair, smoothing her hand over the delicate table setting. I've been so focused on making this work, on proving I belong in their world. She looked up at me, vulnerability, replacing the practiced poise she'd adopted recently. I'm scared, Cyrus. Scared that if I push back too hard, they'll decide I'm not good enough for their son, for their family. If their acceptance is conditional on you, erasing yourself, is it worth having? She didn't answer immediately, her gaze drifting around the greenhouse. The venue she had dreamed of before dreams were replaced by expectations. I do love him, she said finally. Despite everything, then make sure he loves you back. The real you, not the version his family is trying to create. She stood, straightening her shoulders. I need to talk to Marcus, alone. The morning of the wedding arrived bright and clear. I'd spent a restless night wondering what Kelly had said to Marcus after I left, whether the wedding would proceed at all. Part of me feared I'd overstepped, potentially destroying my relationship with my sister in my attempt to save her from herself. I arrived at Crystal Gardens early, determined to ensure everything was perfect, regardless of what Kelly decided. Susan greeted me at the service entrance, her professional demeanor softened by genuine concern. No word from the bride or groom yet, she informed me. But we're proceeding as planned. The florist arrived an hour ago, and the catering team is setting up now. I thanked her, then wandered through the venue. The morning light filtered through the glass ceiling, catching on crystal decorations, and transforming the space into something truly magical. If nothing else, at least Kelly would have the backdrop she'd always wanted for her wedding, if she still wanted the wedding at all. At 9:30, my phone chimed with a text from Kelly. We're on our way. Need to talk before everyone arrives. Relief washed over me. Whatever she'd decided, at least she was still speaking to me. When Kelly arrived 30 minutes later, she wasn't in wedding attire but casual clothes, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. The contrast to her recent polished appearance was striking. She looked more like the sister I remembered. You came, I said unnecessarily. Did you think I wouldn't? I wasn't sure what would happen after last night. She led me to a small sitting area near the bridal suite. Marcus and I talked for hours. About everything. The photo shoot, his parents' control issues, his comments at the bachelor party. She twisted her engagement ring absently. It wasn't an easy conversation. My heart sank. Kelly, if you've decided to call things off. We're still getting married, she interrupted, but on different terms. A small smile played at her lips. I told Marcus that if he wanted a wife who would simply conform to his family's expectations, he should find someone else. That I loved him, but not enough to become someone I don't recognize. How did he take it? Better than I expected. He admitted he's been letting his parents dictate too much, trying to please them at my expense. She sighed. We've modified some things for today. His mother's not happy, but frankly, that's not my primary concern anymore. Relief and pride washed over me. I'm glad to hear it. Don't look so smug, she said, but her tone was light. Your methods were extreme, Cyrus. This could have backfired spectacularly. But it didn't. No, she conceded. It didn't. The wedding proceeded that afternoon, though not exactly as originally planned. Kelly's dress was still the designer gown Marcus's mother had selected, but she'd removed some of the elaborate beading and train, simplifying it to better reflect her taste. The formal sit-down dinner had been replaced with elegant food stations, featuring local Ohio cuisine alongside some of the imported delicacies the Stewarts had insisted upon. Most noticeably, Kelly had abandoned the rigid seating chart that separated guests by social status. Tables were mixed, encouraging Marcus's finance friends to mingle with Kelly's college roommates and our extended family. During the ceremony, I watched Marcus closely, noting how his eyes never left Kelly's face as she walked down the aisle. When it came time for their vows, he set aside the formal traditional script his family had approved and spoke from the heart instead. "Kelly," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the greenhouse, "I promise to love you for who you are not, who anyone else wants you to be. I promise to listen when you speak, to consider your dreams as important as my own, and to build a life that reflects both of us, not just my family's expectations." The surprise on his mother's face was almost comical. Kelly's vows echoed the sentiment with a pointed addition. "I promise to remember who I am and where I came from, to value family, all family, and to never let status or appearances dictate our choices." At the reception, Kelly made a brief speech that further established the new dynamic. She thanked Marcus's parents for their generosity, while standing firmly beside me, her hand on my shoulder. "Today would not have been possible without my brother Cyrus," she said, raising her glass in my direction. "He reminded me of what matters most: authenticity and true family bonds. Sometimes we need someone who loves us enough to call us out when we're losing our way." Marcus's mother maintained a tight smile throughout, but his father approached me during the dinner surprisingly conciliatory. "That was quite a maneuver you pulled," he said, gesturing with his champagne glass. "Risky business." "Sometimes risks are necessary," I replied cautiously. He nodded thoughtfully. Marcus has always had people who say yes to him. Perhaps he needed someone in his life willing to say no. He extended his hand. No hard feelings. Later, during a quiet moment at the bar, Marcus himself sought me out. "Your sister gave me an ultimatum last night," he said without preamble. "She said either we redefine our relationship and my family's involvement, or she walks away." "And you chose her," I observed. "I did." He swirled the whiskey in his glass. "I didn't realize how much she'd been compromising until she laid it all out. The photo shoot," he winced. "That was bad. I should have spoken up." "Yes, you should have." He nodded, accepting the criticism. "I'm not used to challenging my parents, but Kelly deserves better than what they've been doing, what I've been allowing them to do." It wasn't a full apology, but it was an acknowledgement, a starting point perhaps for a more balanced relationship. The most significant change came during the announcements about the honeymoon. Originally planned as a month-long tour of exclusive European resorts, Kelly and Marcus instead announced they were taking 2 weeks to explore national parks in a rented RV, something Kelly had always wanted to do but had abandoned as too simple for the Stewarts' expectations. "We'll do Europe next year," Marcus explained to his visibly dismayed mother. "This trip is about starting our marriage, focusing on experiences, not luxury." As the evening wound down, Kelly found me on the venue's balcony, overlooking the twinkling garden lights below. "I've been a terrible sister," she said without preamble. "You've been a confused sister," I corrected. "There's a difference." "The things I said at that photo shoot." She shook her head. "I can't believe those words came out of my mouth. People say things they don't mean when they're trying to please others. That's no excuse." She turned to face me directly. "I'm sorry, Cyrus. Truly sorry. Not just for the photo shoot, but for everything. Pulling away, dismissing your concerns, letting Marcus and his family treat you like you weren't good enough." The apology I'd been waiting for delivered without qualifications or deflections. "I forgive you," I said simply. "Though I should probably apologize too." She raised an eyebrow. "For nearly sabotaging my wedding, for not finding a less dramatic way to make my point." She laughed, the sound achingly familiar. Her real laugh, not the polite society chuckle she'd adopted recently. "It worked, didn't it?" shock therapy for the soul. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the music from the reception floating up to our quiet sanctuary. "What made you change your mind?" I asked finally. "About going through with the original plan to buy out the venue?" Kelly deserved the truth. "I was prepared to cancel everything to leave you without a venue as a wake-up call. But when I realized the Stewarts had actually booked Crystal Gardens behind your back, I couldn't let that manipulation stand. So instead of revenge, you chose family." "I chose you," I corrected. "The real you, not the Stewart-approved version." She leaned her head against my shoulder, a gesture from our childhood that conveyed more than words could. "Thank you for not giving up on me even when I was awful." "That's what family does," I replied. "The real kind, anyway." 6 months after the wedding, the changes in Kelly's life proved more lasting than I'd dared hope. She and Marcus purchased a house in a neighborhood halfway between downtown and the suburbs, nice but not ostentatious, and notably not in the exclusive enclave where the Stewarts had expected them to settle. More importantly, Marcus had started establishing boundaries with his parents. When his mother criticized Kelly's decision to maintain her marketing career rather than focus on charity boards, Marcus firmly shut down the conversation. "Kelly's career is important to her, and therefore important to me," he told her loud enough that Kelly recounted the story to me with evident pride. "We're building our life based on what makes us happy, not what looks good to your friends." Our monthly sibling dinners resumed sometimes, including Marcus, sometimes just the two of us. The Kelly who showed up was the sister I remembered, passionate about creative projects, full of stories about difficult clients, laughing at herself when she made mistakes. The designer clothes remained, but they no longer defined her. My relationship with Crystal Gardens evolved as well. After the wedding, I approached Susan about a business opportunity. The venue's owner had been considering retirement, and with my real estate experience, and now personal connection to the space, I became a logical potential buyer. The purchase went through 3 months after Kelly's wedding. I maintained the venue's operations largely unchanged, but added a small office where I could base some of my development business. Kelly, finding herself restless with her marketing job, began helping manage the venue part-time, bringing her creative eye to event planning. "It's poetic justice," she told me over coffee in the greenhouse cafe we'd added. "The venue that almost wasn't mine is now partly mine after all." On a crisp autumn evening, we hosted a family dinner at Crystal Gardens, Kelly and Marcus, our parents and me. The tension that had marked our gatherings before the wedding had dissipated, replaced by a new dynamic based on authenticity rather than appearances. Over dessert, my father raised his glass. "To family. The kind that tells you when you've lost your way and helps you find it again." Later, as Kelly and I walked through the gardens, she asked the question I'd been expecting for months. "Were you really going to go through with it? Canceling the venue without a backup if things had been different?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wanted you to face a consequence dramatic enough to break through whatever spell you were under, but another part kept making contingency plans just in case." She nodded thoughtfully. "It's strange to think how differently things might have gone, if Marcus hadn't been willing to change, if I hadn't recognized what was happening." "But you did," I reminded her. "When pushed to choose between authenticity and approval, you chose authenticity. Thanks to you." "No," I corrected gently. "You were always that person. You just needed reminding." Looking back, I understand now how easily money and status can change people, not by transforming who they are at their core, but by gradually shifting their priorities until they no longer recognize the compromises they're making. Kelly didn't become a different person when she met Marcus. She just lost sight of what mattered to her amid the glittering allure of acceptance. The temptation of revenge had been powerful. In my darkest moments after the photo shoot, I'd imagined Kelly's devastation upon learning her venue had been canceled with nowhere to go. I'd pictured the Stewarts' carefully cultivated image crumbling as their perfect wedding fell apart. But revenge would have given me only momentary satisfaction at the cost of a lifetime of relationship. By choosing a different path, challenging rather than punishing, I'd preserved what mattered most. Family bonds can be tested, stretched, even temporarily broken. But when they're rooted in genuine love, rather than obligation, they have remarkable resilience. Kelly and I had found our way back to the relationship we'd always had, strengthened now by the knowledge that we'd weathered a serious storm together. The greatest freedom I've learned doesn't come from making others pay for their mistakes. It comes from releasing the need for vengeance and choosing connection instead. Not because the hurt wasn't real or the anger unjustified, but because beyond those legitimate feelings lies something more valuable, the authentic bonds that define us more truly than any status or appearance ever could. So what about you? Have you ever been tempted to get revenge on someone who hurt you, only to choose a different path, or perhaps you went through with it and learned a different lesson? Share your experience in the comments below. I read everyone. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes the stories that impact us most are the ones that remind us who we really are when status and appearances are stripped away.